department of Rumbu Holdings. We trade on the TSX Venture Exchange under the trading symbol RMB. We're a holding company in the business of acquiring funeral homes. Our marketplace is Western Canada. We look for funeral homes in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. We're just a startup company, so it's early days. We currently own 5 funeral homes. 2 more are planned to be completed the next 2 months before Christmas. And we're looking to acquire at least 8 funeral homes next year. We started the company as a CPC on the Venture Exchange, did our qualifying transaction. So it's been a slow progress in acquiring because it takes time to put deals together. We generally buy funeral homes from what we call the ma and pa's, who've had the funeral homes in their businesses for many years, and they haven't got a succession plan, and in a lot of cases their children don't want to take over the funeral homes, which was traditionally the way a lot of funeral homes were owned and operated for many years. So we have opportunities to buy funeral homes everywhere, but we generally stick to geographic areas and small towns. We're not buying funeral homes in Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and so on. Daryl Lockyer, who's coming up here in a minute, he's what I call the royal jelly. He's the guy that has been in the funeral home business for 35 years. He's highly regarded, well known in the business, and he runs our funeral homes. I stay away from the management of the funeral homes. My job is to look after the public company. Anything to do with press releases or anything to do with the exchange, that's my job, and I also do the acquisition transactions. So I hope now, are you ready to go, big guy? Okay. The model that we use, we tend to pay very top dollar for the funeral homes. Our bank basically evaluates, sends in their appraisers, and they evaluate the building and lands. In all cases, we buy funeral homes with building and lands, and hopefully there's always a crematorium, which is a big part of the business. So the way we do those purchases is Daryl looks at the funeral home, we assess the value, and how do we do that? Well, after the bank puts value on the building and lands, that part's easy. We also are able to determine a number or value for the business, partly from looking at the balance sheet and the statement of income, but more by looking at the average number of funerals that each funeral home's performed in the past 3 years on average. And then we have sort of a number in our mind we think that each funeral is worth to us. The markup on a funeral, surprisingly, can range from 65 to 69%. So it's a very healthy markup. So the businesses that we buy, we tend to think that we can increase the value of each business that we buy, and we tend to think that the bank undervalues the building and lands. But we basically go to the ma and pa's and we say, look, we can buy your shares. And why do we do that? It's advantageous for them, because they know they're going to get the capital gains exemption on the sale of the shares of a Canadian-controlled private corporation. Makes it easy for them. So they might want to go off and spend the winters in Florida or Palm Desert or whatever. They've got cash in hand. Their kids didn't want to take over the business. And we have a way that since Daryl and I have been in the business for many years, I was the independent director of a private funeral home business based out of Lethbridge. And together, Daryl and I acquired 17 funeral homes. And we learned lots of lessons about things you should do and things you might not want to do. And one of the things we learned how to value those businesses and how to value the employees, which is a very important part of what we do. So what we really think is important is retaining and training young people in our system. And there's lots of young people that want to get into the business. Surprisingly, it's actually more women than men. But we put them through our training program. We value them greatly. When we buy a funeral home, we look at the staff, and Daryl and his wife Jamie, who's our vice president, she's been in the business for 25 years. They go in and they work with the staff and show them new ways to run funeral homes better than the old ways, and how to improve the business. And we use technology, we use modern business practices, and we generally, it's not quite a top-down situation. So if you look at the big boys in the industry, And one, Park Lawn, for example, has just been privatized. We think that they made mistakes in the way they ran their business, and that's why their stock kind of bounced around for a while. They were in the cemetery business as well as the funeral home business, and we're not in the cemetery business. We're strictly in the funeral home business. SCI, which is the biggest funeral home business in North America, based in Texas, we actually bought 8 funeral homes from them after the Lohan Brothers group collapsed. They used to be with them, and then we bought those funeral homes mostly in Alberta. SCI is a very successful publicly traded funeral home company, trading with very high multiples, 11 to 12 times EBITDAs or cash flow. So, Daryl, are you ready to roll?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is Mr. Lockyer, Daryl Lockyer. He's our president and CEO. We couldn't run this business without him. He knows everything about how to run funeral homes, and I'll step aside and let him speak.
Well, how exciting. Funeral homes. Great, just before lunch. Better than 4:30 though, I'll take that. So, I want to thank you all first for coming. I really appreciate it. I've been doing this a long time, 35 years, turned 51. My wife's done it for 25 years. And you probably wonder why would we want to be doing this at this point? We worked with the company, we've done a lot of different things, but what we find is by taking a public model and coming to people like yourselves, is we believe in getting people in our industry ownership and participation. How do we do funeral service in smaller communities if we don't have funeral directors, if we don't have these certain things? So what we have done in Rumbu is we've created a model to get people to invest in us and in communities with people that are junior, newly licensed, or they live in a community where they just don't have the money to buy the owner out. So what we do is Rumbu partners with these people to create a continued success rate of community service and funeral service in those communities. And what we have found is it's helped immensely in our industry because we had a lack of people in our industry for a long time. And so by creating this model, we find that we have friends, families, co-workers for the last how many years that we can involve and find places for them to achieve. It is very, very difficult in the funeral service market, A, to find staff, B, to service families in these rural communities. And so what we find is when you look at investing, we're not a company that's going to shoot right off the charts. Sorry to burst the bubble. We're about continued growth by supporting communities, by supporting our young partners or people that are in those communities. When we look at our company, we've built a solid foundation, losing some money in the first year, losing some money in the second year, but we're committed to our goals to complete this. And Ross knows that this year, what we ended up doing is we started making quarterly profits, which gives us the chance to now restructure, come to people like yourselves, and we can grow the business. Our goal is to increase funeral homes in clusters, in areas with partners, and sort of areas that we know. We like Western Canada. I'm licensed in the 4 provinces, as is my wife. We believe that if we can control things, we can have synergies, we can have clusters that will promote us to train and get people in. We're not a bank model. The bank model is I go to a small town, then to the next town, then to the next town, and eventually I get to a large center. But what we will find with this company is we're committed to growth in a very safe environment. We do not take massive risks. We are educated in our decision-making process. It's very, very important in anything because we've seen a lot of, everyone says, well, death and taxes, right? We got death and taxes, you're 100% good. Well, it's true, but there's different changes to every industry. And being in it and seeing a lot of the changes is really changing our philosophy with cremation rates going up. Is there more funeral homes? Is there, the cost of funerals are ridiculous. So if we turn around and we invest a lot of energies to create a better environment for these funeral homes, we're going to see a continued growth throughout the next couple of years. The biggest, you even got a mic. The biggest thing that we want to do is, thank you. Then you don't have to watch me walk around. The biggest thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that as we acquire businesses in a way that we have in the past, that we can continue to see a difference of service. And we are a service-based industry. We're a service-based company. So we think that by doing this, it's going to change a lot. We've seen so much of our industry crumble. We've seen a lot of our industry really struggling to have better people, different people, adjusting to millennials, adjusting to new cultures. Nobody knows new cultures. So as we do this, our company has the ability to continue training them and in training our investment people to invest in us by trust. And trust is one thing that we believe in our industry is huge. The other is our aspect of trying to get growth in pre-need. Pre-need funerals are very important to future profitability of funeral homes in the area. As we said, clusters, synergies, everything turns to similar projects. Funeral service is quite easy in the aspect of you go through a McDonald's at noon, they have 400 customers. We have 50 to 250 a year. So you only have so much time to service a family to make sure that they're doing it right. So with these, I mean, we can talk about profitability, we can talk about all those things. You can go on CDAR, you'll see all of our numbers. But the biggest thing is understanding what we were trying to do and why we're different. We believe we can take larger corporations that don't want to be in our areas and support the growth, training, and getting our people into better situations to service everyone.
Our philosophy is quite different. We want each funeral home to be run by the people that live in the community. So the funeral director, the people in the funeral home are in the community. Their kids play hockey together. They know everybody in the community. It's part of the deal. We're not a top-down organization. And in fact, we've been asked about this today. We're setting up a program so that all of our funeral home directors will participate in the bottom line profits out of their funeral homes, out of each funeral home. So at the end of the year, when we go to dividend, money up to the parent company, so up to Rumbu Holdings, there'll be a piece cut out for the funeral directors, so we could actually pay top dollar. We'll pay them the standard going rate for a funeral director, but we'll top it up at the end of the year with a dividend, because that's why we don't think we're a top-down organization, and that's why. And I know the story better than most because Lowen went into certain jurisdictions where they shouldn't have gone. They just weren't going to have a chance. Some of the southern states, they just didn't understand the politics and the court system and the legalities of going into business in those communities. We are sticking to our simple marketplace, Western Canada, the 4 Western provinces. And we have no desires at this point to go anywhere east of that. And it's just, our game plan is just to buy funeral homes in the 4 Western provinces. Daryl, where'd you go?
I'm hiding behind you. Yeah, the partnership model, and the one nice thing with our company is we have the relationships to bulk buy, discounting. We can bring in technology into areas that, if somebody's done it the same way all the time, then they continue to do so. We just have built this model. We've tested it before, and we've found that it's just a system that works. And when you include people in ownership, when they can't afford it, you get a whole different service between an employee and an owner. And we found that's the difference, and it also allows us to attract some of the best people in our industry for our locations.
So for you as investors in our company, we think that you will see steady, not crazy wild, just very steady growth in the value of the company and also then in the value of the shares, your shareholdings in our company. It's not going to be a rocket ship. It's just going to be steady acquisitions, buy more funeral homes, add to the bottom line, integrate our people, and make it all work. So that's the business plan that we have, and we're invested in our company.
Any other questions?